Hey everyone, and welcome to the MCast. Today we have Meagan Sommerville. She is Executive Director for the West Island Community Share. It's a non-profit organization that is responsible for supporting over 40 other organizations in the area. So Meagan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ray and I were looking forward to this conversation. There's so much to discuss. Why don't we start by introducing the mission of the West Island Community Share? How did you end up taking the position?
Sure.
And then we can dive into the challenges that you have with the fundraising, especially after COVID and also the uncertainty with the economic that we're going through right now.
Right.
Perfect.
Sure. So I'll get into it. So I'm from West Island Community Shares. I'm the newest executive director. I've been in the role for about 8 months. I've learned a lot in the last 8 months, let me tell you. So what we do is we're a charity. We support 40 groups in the West Island. So grassroots organizations that are fulfilling the need of West Islanders. The idea, we can talk about it, a little bit later, but the idea that West Island doesn't have needs, unfortunately, is just not true. So we need to support them. So we raise funds and we do that fundraising piece for them and we give back. When we say what groups we support, because 40 is a big number, we invest in 6 main fields. So we invest in mental health, so healthy body, healthy mind, really important, resilient children, youth, empowering women, green initiative, vulnerable populations, and so much more. So if you were to donate to us, it has a far reach. Another interesting piece is that not only do we raise funds and give the money back, but we do the due diligence process. So if a donor were to give us $1, we would say that dollar is fulfilling a mission. So we go and we meet bi-yearly, so twice a year. We go and meet with the groups themselves to say, how is this money being spent? What impact are you doing? So we're doing that due diligence piece for you. Sometimes it's not hard to give, but it's hard to choose who to give to. Is that money having the right impact? So we're doing that piece for you as well.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So can you talk about some of the organizations and causes that you support on the West Island? Obviously, there's 40, if I'm not mistaken.
Over 40.
We can't get through all 40.
Right.
Maybe in part 2 of this this podcast with you. However, if you could touch on some of the more prominent ones, or maybe one's not more important than another, but some that are close and near and dear to your heart.
Absolutely. So maybe what I can do is I can tell you some stats and you can see sort of, in the West Island, what are the trends right now and focus on those groups just because so many needs, which ones to pick, I can base on those ones. So right now in the West Island, in our own neighborhood, we're seeing a 25% increase in food bank use. So I'll say it again because it's important. 25% more influx in the food banks of the West Island. So we support...
Since 2023?
Since 2023.
Wow. Okay.
So, and the trends are changing. So it's actually a lot of younger individuals that are just starting their career that can afford with inflation, housing, a phone, because you all need a phone to get, access to jobs, to people, to social network. So they're really struggling. So we're seeing influx in that. So we support all the main food banks in the West Island. So for example, you can ensure that your donation is going to go to that cause. Another trend that we're seeing right now is within the youth. So post-pandemic, we're seeing a lot of violence and actually gang violence in the West Island. And it's something that's not known, but it's there. So we invest a lot of money back into the youth sector. So that could be from mental health to our groups that are Maison des Jeunes or a teen zone that's within the YMCA, for example. They offer a safe space for youth off the street. So we make sure that we give money for them to fund that safe space, but to have qualified staff.
Okay.
Another piece would be the mental health. 1 in 2 people, and this is worldwide, not just the West Island, but it's important to know, 1 in 2 people aren't receiving the care that they need. So we need to make sure that we're, as a community, making sure that those resources are available to them. And it comes down to funding.
And how do you hold them accountable? I mean, it's not only the financial aspect that you guys give. Mm-hmm. Do you monitor their operation and do they report to you on a monthly basis, every quarter, every year? Like, how are they being held accountable? Because I'm pretty sure that you have other organizations who are coming, knocking your door, who need help.
Yes.
Right? But you can't support everyone.
Yeah.
So you have to be selective. So let's talk about the accountability part.
Sure.
And
Yeah, so what we do is we meet with our groups twice a year. We have one mid-year. We do just, a conversation, a touch base. But right now we're about to dive into in March our year end. So it's going to be my first time as a director going through the process. But that's how we create trust with our donors. So what we do is we deep dive into them. It's an hour-long conversation when we say, what have you done? What are the challenges you're facing? Maybe it's because they need more money. Maybe it's because they found other diverse funding and they need us a little bit less. So there's that conversation. We actually look at their financial report as well. Okay. And we get it audited. We make sure that there's no funny business, even though we love our groups and we, of course, don't expect that to be a reality, but we want to make sure that that's that everything's kosher. And we help with governance. So governance for nonprofits, everyone has to have a board of directors that's fair, that's ethical, that's doing the right thing. So we actually have somebody on our team who's a director of communication, liaison, relationships that will go into the groups to make sure that they're functioning properly, to see if they need help. And we provide, of course, I always talk about raising funds and the charity component, but we offer services and we're happy to go in and share our knowledge base with them to help them reach their full potential.
Big operation.
It's a big operation, and we're only 6 women, and half of us are part-time, so it's a lot of,
Coming back to the West Island and 25% more use of food banks. There's this perception in Montreal that in the West Island, or on the West Island for that matter, these types of problems don't exist, right? 25% is a huge jump. No matter what number you started at, a quarter more is huge. Is this due to COVID? Is it due to, living expenses in general? Or would you say it's just becoming more of a widespread problem across Montreal, across Canada for that matter, where families and people are having a harder time making ends meet no matter what walk of life they come from?
I think it's a little bit mix of all the things that you said, and there's no one answer that's a one size fits all. I would say that right now we're seeing an increase. Of course, we know inflation is there. Like, people just can't afford, and unfortunately you would think that, food is a basic necessity, but after everything, there's just no money left for them to support their families for food. So that's a big one. Another piece that we see, and this is post-pandemic, but we're feeling it now, is the mental health piece. So, maybe they're not able to go back to the work in same capacity. So that's affecting, their livelihood and ultimately reflecting their basic needs. So we're seeing a lot of it's a bit of a ripple effect. So there was the pandemic, post-pandemic, and it's a ripple effect down now to people just can't provide themselves the basic needs. You mentioned that, it's the West Island, it's assumed to be an area that doesn't have needs, and it's so sad. And my job is in fundraising to say, no, this is not true. Unfortunately, the West Island, and it's sad to say, but it's not true. We do have needs right here. Our campaign, our whole motto of West Island Community Shares is we live here, we give here.
Okay.
And let's create a community to support community.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's dive into the fundraising part of what you do. People often mistake that because if it is nonprofit, that it's not run as a business, but it is run as a business. You have goals to meet. You have responsibilities towards your other nonprofit organization, and responsibility towards the mission, what we stand for, and why we're doing this. When it comes to fundraising, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are 2 types of fundraisers. You have your corporate, and then you have individuals. When I say individuals, probably I'm talking about like single person and small businesses. So my question to you, how do you approach these, not the big corporates, and how do you retain them as donors? And then we can talk about the individual after.
Absolutely. So I'll jump into the corporate partnership. So we're really lucky to have some big corporate sponsors, and how we run is it costs money to make money. So we ourselves as an entity have admin costs. They have to pay my salary, they have to pay our rent for our office, and it's all modest because I am from the nonprofit sector. But we do have our corporate companies that come in and help support those costs. So they really do help with the admin, so that the individual donor or every event that we do comes, and we say that money goes directly back into the community. For the business piece of it, of course, when we work with a corporate organization, they do it from the bottom of the heart and they want to give us money and it goes to a big need, and that's foremost, and we're so grateful. But it is a business, and there always comes with a little bit of visibility for that as well. So how do we ensure that, they get the visibility, whether it be at an event, whether it be, just when I'm in a podcast or talking to you today saying, Pfizer and National Bank, for example, is one of our big funders and corporate partners. And I'm sorry for those who I didn't mention because we have so many. Yeah. But, it is a business. For them, we need to make, it is important that we have good governance as well. So I have a board of 16 professionals from these big corporations. And actually, Ali is one of my board members who I'm so honored to have. So we need to make sure that we're running well and we're having to do the same sort of reporting that we do with the other groups that I mentioned. So we're not, saying we raise money and then we, it's a free for all over here and we give that out. We have to do a proper due diligence as well and keep our admin costs down. We have to make sure that we're giving every money back. Last year was a record-breaking year. We gave $1.5 million back to the West Island.
That's unreal.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive. So you're obviously running it like a company. It's run like a business.
That's right.
How do you when talking about the fundraising aspect? Is your fundraising done strictly within your network? Is it done through events? Is it done through a mix of the two? Can you touch on how someone like you goes out and at the beginning of the year, like Ali and I know how we establish business, and in January we start our year and we say we need to do this, and this, and we're at the bottom of the hill and we're looking at the top of the hill and we need to get back up there because last December we were there and we need to figure out how to get back, right?
Yeah. Right.
So can you touch on how you do that?
Sure. So when we raise funds, we do it in like a multifaceted approach. So of course, we were talking about corporate donors. We have individual donors, which we can talk about a little bit more. Sure. There's challenges with that. But we do events, and post-pandemic, something that we're trying to push is third-party events as well. So, I think that, when we look out post-pandemic, everybody wants to get together, but they don't know how to give. So how do I approach someone? I think it's saying, okay, Ali, or anyone who I'm working with, do you know anybody who has a business or who wants to give back but doesn't know who to give to? That's it's about resource mapping and sort of saying, okay, who's out there, so who wants to give back to a cause and how do they give back to a cause? You need to make sure that your approach is there. Some people want to give a check and that's that. Some people wanted it to come with an event. So we do offer events, and we offer events in different ranges. So for example, every September we do a community breakfast where it's $25 a ticket, and there's a lot of community members there. You can actually come see the groups that are doing the hard work, and we have about 300 people in the room. Then a couple of weeks ago, we did a larger event.
Your biggest event for the year?
Biggest event reached 266,000. We do it at 40 West in the West Island. It's a high-end networking event where businesses come with their clients who want to be a friend and ally of West Island Community Shares, and we continue our growth. So basically what I'm saying is I am happy to do the ask. That is my job. I'm happy to inform people about the needs. Let's live here, give here campaign. But I can't do it alone. We're such a small group. I need to use the people around me. You build communities. Sure. I want to build a community of helping communities. So this is a perfect partnership. We're working together to, work together and raise that awareness and that give back mentality.
You explain everything that you do, and I see passion.
Yes.
I mean, that's a lot. Yeah. Where does it come from?
Yeah.
Like, how do you keep that passion going day after day after day?
Yeah.
You and your team, because calling someone and asking for money, it's not everyone.
No.
It's not something that everyone can do, right? So it's. I mean, even in our field, for example, if I'm looking to get a new business, I'm asking for a business, but I'm going to provide a service. Right. I'm going to get paid for that service. You're asking for money to help other communities. So how do you share that passion with the donor?
Right. A little bit about me. So I'm 8 months into the role. I think I mentioned that at the beginning. My background is completely different from anyone else that has been in the role in the past. That's so, right. For example, my predecessor was very corporate, from the corporate world, and had developed her career and was in this role for about 5 years and did amazing things. Me coming in after, I'm a different generation. I'm a different background. So my background, I started working in intervention in the West Island. So I worked intervention for years. My specialty was youth in need, youth at risk. Then later on turned into direction of a community organization, and one of the community organizations that West Island Community Share supports. So for me, when this job came available, I said, oh, how amazing would it be to raise the funds for those colleagues? And I know the hard work and the needs that are there in the West Island to kind of come around full circle. Learning curve, because it's a lot more corporate and a little bit different. I've never spoke so much. I've been in so many interviews in my life. So it's a bit of a different from in my office where there's individuals of the community crying, intervention, like very different. But it makes me passionate to fight and make sure that we're supporting, those.
So you come from a background of intervention.
Yeah.
Can we touch on that? What type of intervention with youth? Was it youth that had trouble with addiction? Was it that type of intervention? Or were you intervening in youths who, are homeless or have behavioral issues?
So my specific expertise, it was around addiction, it was around behavioral issues in a capacity where, they were not going to school, they needed to come talk to someone to create a plan. So I was really in the planning, creating, connecting them with social workers on the streets. If you want to go to a resource, I will come with you. So that's my background. Later on in my career, when I say intervention, I was overseeing a group who did that, where we were in intervention, we were working with homeless, we were doing, a wide variety of things. So I would say I would touch on it. And we work with families as well. Because when we say we work with youth, we always assume it's the youth itself, but sometimes it's the youth, the parents. They're at a loss. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to support. So that's a little bit my background. And actually, I can just say where I was. I was at the Y in the West Island. I was the director there for the last several years, and obviously throughout the pandemic was a challenge because you had to close the doors and youth are on the streets and there's the mental health. So when I came back, post pandemic, and we serve them throughout, we always opened our doors specifically to this population. We found it very important, even though the gym portion was closed because of the rules and regulations. We continue to serve them, and that's that. So again, this is one, and I'm aware, and what motivates me is this is just one area that is my background, but we do serve now with community shares. We, as a homeless shelter, we serve women empowerment. So, refugee for women, green initiative. So there's so much more than that little niche I knew.
Yeah.
In the West Island, that was my expertise.
Were you also involved with people coming in from Ukraine?
Me, no. I had moved on to different things, and I've been in this role. I actually, another thing about me, since we're chatting about me, I came back from mat leave not too long ago. So mat leave, new job. Yeah, thank you so much. He's almost 2, so he's still my baby though.
Beautiful. So it's interesting because there's 2 parts here that I want to touch on. First is we touched on 25% more food bank usage on the West Island. Another perception people may have is that there's not as much troubled youth on the West Island rather than other communities or other areas of, say, Quebec or Canada, right? Without giving a number, how many youth would you say is it a common problem on the West Island where youth are in trouble? There's issues with addiction and behavior and homelessness and dropping out of school and running away from home.
Absolutely. And you know what? The reality is that maybe from before a pandemic to now, the number has not necessarily increased, but the complexity of cases has increased, especially around violence and gang violence coming back to the West Island.
That's right. Wow.
So it's the complexity of cases. So we need to make sure that, those that are providing the critical services for these youth have the education, have the support, have the means, to.
And I believe there's a shortage on that as well.
There's always a shortage. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's one of those things. It's like we're always helping, always working, but it's hard. Right now we know, again, I'm changing, demographics a little bit, but 1 in 4 women will have conjugal violence issues in their lifetime. And that's just it's not just West Island, but in general, there's only 1 shelter in the West Island.
That's interesting you touch on that. That became a huge problem during COVID.
Exactly.
I was hearing about it in the news all the time, conjugal violence, women being, beaten or women being killed in many situations. And you're right, there is only 1 shelter. And obviously it became huge during COVID because I saw it in my business. I'm sure Ali saw it in his business too, where couples were with each other, working with each other, under the same roof, between the same four walls, 24/7. And in my business, I saw a lot of divorces. Yeah. A lot of couples ended up getting divorced because they were like, we don't want to live like this anymore. And I spoke to a couple once and I asked, and they said it wasn't only working together. Obviously, there was no conjugal violence issues or anything happening with this specific couple, but they said it wasn't only working with each other. COVID taught them that life is too short. So they realized that this is not the partner they want to live the rest of their life with. It's a little bit off topic, but coming back to, the conjugal violence, that skyrocketed.
Right.
Not only in the West Island, across Canada. And you would hear about it.
Right.
Was it femicide? Was that what they were calling it? Like if there was violence and a death involved, I think that's what they were calling it instead of so obviously scary times, and it continued.
And I think it's important to note that needs are ever changing. So we're talking about this needs right now, but in 6 months, a year from now, they might be different.
That's true.
It's always changing, and it's hard. Sometimes we say, okay, is it from this that it changes from this? And sometimes there's an obvious answer, but sometimes it's just systemic, and we need to say, okay, like how do we as a community, and I keep going back to community because that's my bread and butter, and I get so excited about, you are meeting with clients, and you're a supporter of West Island Community Shares. It's part of just sharing the knowledge, sharing what's out there, that there's needs, and I think when we create knowledge and we share that educational piece, it reduces the stigma behind it.
Yes.
It will help people seek help. And there is help offered in our area, but not everyone knows. So the more, of course, I'm in fundraising, so the more they know, the more they give, which, is my job. But ultimately, it has such a ripple effect that's so beyond that.
You're right.
And we rely on our partners to help us with that, for sure.
So going back to that, the stats evolve, each year. So the numbers may be high next year, maybe lower. So, but each nonprofit has different needs and it evolves differently. Going back to the fundraising piece. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the corporate donors. Let's talk about small businesses and single donors. I think there's a say, don't have all your balls in one basket, right? So every little help. How do you retain the small donors to give year after year at small businesses? Small businesses going to have challenges because of the economics, because the inflation, and the first thing they will cut is giving money because they have to keep their business going.
Right.
How do you keep recruiting newer donors, because you may lose one or two each year, but you have to replace them to keep your goal going.
Right. Yeah. So start with the small businesses, and I think when we're working with them, we could be creative in how we raise money.
Yes.
So for example, this past holiday season, we have companies or small businesses that's write us a check and say, oh, here you go, and this is our donation. Some also are doing a holiday party and they're saying, you know what, I'm just going to give a simple example, but, we have a holiday party at such and such location, and usually we charge $30 for the spouses. We're going to cover for the spouses, and that $30 that they give us, we're going to give to you. We're going to do a 50-50 raffle on site, something fun, and it gets the employees excited and they want to give back and they're happy. That sense of giving back is so great, especially around the holidays. So there could be something like that a small business does. Of course, when you give us a check, there is that visibility piece as well, because like we mentioned before, it is a business. So we're happy to help, whether you're a big corporation or a smaller one. Every donation matters. And if you give us $5,000 or $100,000, that is significant for you. So we want that to be felt, and that's my job, and I genuinely feel that way. What you give, we're so grateful because it is a big impact. For the individual donation piece, unfortunately, and this isn't just this year, this has been like a long-standing challenge, the individual donations are going down. It could be many reasons. One is I don't think that younger people are donating. It's a little bit unfortunate. We got to sort of figure out, again, how to get them mobilized, how to get them to give back. And the second piece, and this is my personal opinion from maybe my own, before working in charity, is that you would always see on social media people with big checks, 50,000, 100,000. And you're like, hey, well, maybe my like $50 isn't going to go anywhere. Who am I? Why am I going to donate? No. If everyone gave $5, $50, $100, $500, whatever it may be, think about that. Like, it's fantastic when you get behind, and that creates such an impact, and that money does go a long way.
Yeah.
If we keep
it does go a long way because it's volume, right?
It's volume.
Like, I remember when I started with the Montreal Children's Hospital, it was a very small amount that I was sending them every month.
Right.
But I'm one of hundreds of thousands of people in Quebec that are sending them those checks or the automatic transfer. And then it increases. And then you get involved, and then you start talking to them about doing a toy drive, during Christmas for the sick kids. I chose that as an avenue to donate to. I'm always looking for others, and it's so important to give back to the community, especially the community that feeds you.
Right.
The community that we work in. It's so important to give back. And I mean, it's not only for political reasons or for exposure. There's a time in life, whether it's from a business or personal standpoint, where we've all as human beings have required some sort of help.
Yeah. And
then when, I'm going to use God here, when God gives you what you dreamt of or what you wanted or what you worked towards, it's at that moment you need to kind of look back at where you came from and the moment that you needed help and start giving back to the community. I think it's so important, and you talked about stigma. I know we ventured off into other things. The stigma is not only associated with this, the stigma I find was associated with so many things, including mental health in men.
Yeah. So,
you have a huge media company in Canada and Quebec that has a day dedicated to mental health,
right.
And they talk about it on radio and TV and social media. And you every time you tweet something or X something, as it's called now, they donate X amount to men's mental health or mental health in general. And, when I was younger, mental health was important, but guys didn't talk about it.
Right.
You don't cry. You're strong and you deal with stuff and you're kind of like the man, And now it's so normal that you're actually seeing professional athletes seeking out mental health help and assistance during the season and taking a step away from the game.
Right.
And it's so important. And I find the stigma is not only with what you do. I find the stigma is kind of like changing, and the tides are turning in so many different areas or walks of life.
Right. And I think with that, with the stigma changing, and that's where it goes back to knowledge is power. People have been talking about it, so it becomes less stigmatized, and you have to keep doing that. We have to keep doing, the hard work, educating, our colleagues, our community, just to mention for fundraising. Even today, I say the stats, because of the food banks, they talk about women, talk about these things. Unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but they're a little bit sometimes like a sexier thing to talk about versus some of the groups that are maybe doing work that are a little less known. So we have to continue working on that and continue doing things. So for right now, you're right, mental health, there's a big campaign I know you're talking about. They're doing all these kinds of things. For me, sometimes to find money and talk about mental health, sometimes it could be a little bit easier because it hits home. It hits home versus if I was going to talk about, and I don't want to pick out a certain group, but, something that was a little bit more of a one-off that serves such a small population, but so important. And without them, they would have no access to resources.
And we do that by spreading awareness.
Yes.
Right? So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I find most of the nonprofits, they still rely on the old platform of generating fundraising, right? I don't see the uses of social media evolved a lot.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I think it's a free platform that we have access to, but it's not properly utilized, especially with the new generation. from my experience in the field of real estate, you're gonna have even stronger reach through the social media. Are these something that you guys are discussing or trying to evolve? Because I think it's out there, it's free, right, and this is a great way to spread the awareness and the messaging. And because you support like multiple nonprofits, you can always pick up on a, as you call it, what's the 6-year trend right now?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that we have work to do working on our social media. I think we've talked about this, you know, in the past. Like I said, Ali's on my board in terms of strategy. There's work to do, especially when I mentioned that the new individual donors, we're not getting younger people. So how do we make it so that they know, and social media is a tool? Because, you know, we are working, unfortunately, still a lot of the money that we're getting is from the older population. There's two sides. So yes, I still need to send, you know, snail mail, something by mail where they can send their check back in. We need to have that option. We need to have an event. People want to come in person. And then we also use campaigns online that we do. And we get a good feedback from that. But there's work to do, especially as you look to the future. We just celebrated 25 years as a charity. So as we look to the future, we need to stay with the trends. And this is where the work in social media really needs to ramp up. And me as a younger person, this is very exciting for me. And, you know, I hope I can help lead that as I continue my role.
Beautiful. People like you are so needed in our community. So I thank you so much for what you do. It's not easy running a nonprofit, overseeing everything that you guys give, plus looking at how to generate a new.
It's I like using this term a lot. It's God's work, right? It's so important because we live in a society right now where it doesn't matter where you're from or what you do. Everyone is really, you know, in the rat race. Everyone is, you know, thinking in a capitalist way, you know, thinking for themselves, for their business. And whenever I see people running non-for-profit organizations or leading them or, you know, having these fundraisers and devoting their time and energy, I often wonder myself, I look at it and I say, like, how do they find the time? And once they find the time, where is all this passion and energy coming from? It's so important, you know? And yes, I commend you for that.
Thank you so much. And I don't do it alone, right? Like I keep mentioning, but my board is fantastic. And we have our donors, and I treat donors, yes, they give us money, but they're partners. They're part of something bigger. And there's so much value to that. So, you know, thank you so much. And it's very kind, but it's not just me. I do with the donors and my team. Which makes a huge difference. And we would be nothing if it wasn't for the groups doing the hard work.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So we have to say thank you to the groups that are doing the hard work as well to help our West Islanders.
Perfect.
So when you hold these events at restaurants, like you mentioned earlier, or prominent steakhouses and so on and so forth, are they also involved?
Yeah.
Like, so they're also a part. They're like, you know, you can hold your event here. That will be our part. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, I mean, every event's a little bit different and they contribute in different ways, but we are a charity. We've built good relations. Whenever we do an event, there's always some sort of, you know, deal, that they help us out with as a sponsor of an event. I think, you know, moving forward, and for me, like a call to action is in the past before the pandemic, there used to be something called third-party events. So it would be, you know, maybe this would be a smaller business or somebody who is going to be having a, you know, 50th birthday party or whatever it may be. They would turn it into an event, or they say, I want to do a golf tournament, or I want to hold a poker night, or whatever it may be. They would host these beautiful events. They would make and then they would make a nice check and donation, and we would, of course, like meet with them because we're so grateful, and they'd be part of something bigger. This is something that hasn't really come back post-pandemic, so now life's, you know, becoming a little bit more social, something to continue pushing.
And I would also like you to tell our viewers how someone can get involved in multiple facets. One, how can they sit on the board if there's availability? 2, how they can donate and where? And 3, when there are future events, how can they attend?
Absolutely. So we put everything on our social media. So we're happy to do that. So first things first, you can go to our website, westislandcommunityshares.ca. You can make an online donation. You can learn more about the groups that we support. So we have it all on there, and you can find the events that are upcoming. To sit on our board, right now I don't necessarily have any spots, but what we do always have spots for are people who want to get involved in volunteering in our events. So to be hands-on, helping at whatever that event may be. And we also have our fund distribution committee. So I had mentioned that we do the due diligence and we go meet with the groups twice a year. We're always looking for volunteers that want to accompany a staff member to help dive into a group. And we're looking for professionals who want to share their experience and their expertise to help in that. So we're always looking for that. So ultimately what we need from, potential viewers is to donate. Sure. And if you aren't able to donate money, which of course we always are looking for to help fund the mission, donate your time.
What would you require as far as time? Give an example of where someone could volunteer.
It really depends. So if you had lots and lots of hours to give, maybe it's not better suit with us. Maybe you say, we'll call one of the food banks that we support or one of these youth groups or whatever it may be. Maybe you want to work directly with the group itself. We have such a large network in supporting the West Island. Okay. So there's need. We'll help find and fulfill that need.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We appreciate you coming in. We will definitely continue. Maybe we could have more of the West Island Community Shares team on next time.
Absolutely.
Yourself and some of the ladies that help you in this mission. And thank you for coming in this morning and having this discussion and educating the West Island and of course our viewers on what you do and how they can help. It's so important to do this in our community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.